Tonight we land on Texas A&M, and I am going to try very hard to not make it sound like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. Because when I look at Texas A&M, I think about a team that, man, might be pretty good on both lines of scrimmage yet again. I really do think that they still have a lot of really good talent that returns. They got guys like Nick Scourton at the edge that I think the battle between him and Will Campbell is going to be an outright slugfest. But they still got a lot of guys returning along their offensive line. They still have a really strong unit at running back. Connor Weigman is still a very talented quarterback, and I think that they have some good receivers. The question is going to become, really, what do they do at linebacker, and is their secondary going to be any good? If they do have a decent secondary, I don't know if they're not a pretty good team on paper. I think they're very much a talented team. Somewhat kind of feel like they reloaded. Shamar Stewart returns. He's moving into the interior. Now, you do have to replace, if you're A&M, Edgerrin Cooper from Covington, I might add. They have question marks in what we've always talked about, their back seven of the linebackers and DBs. But at both lines of scrimmage, they're going to be moderately pretty good. Now, going into this game, LSU won't have to travel to Kyle Field. Probably a 2:30, 3:30 potentially game that is at night. And let's just be honest, the last 2 years, you have not been able to go in there and win. You should have had a 10-2 season under Brian Kelly in year one before you went to Texas A&M and laid an egg before you played for the SEC championship game. You fell bad in that one. You got pushed around by a 5-7 football team that wanted it more than you. But A&M did the biggest thing that everybody had been talking about over the last 2 years. They did pay Jimbo his buyout. They did get him out of there, and they went and got a guy who they think can lead A&M and Mike Elko back to where, or not really back to where they once were, but get them to a place where they've kind of never been, if we're being honest, in this millennia. In this millennia, they have not been there. I look at their offense and say, man, I really think that they're going to be able to run the football. I think Colin Klein, if he calls things the right way and he has an offense that they're just trying to get north and south and not trying to go east and west, and they lean on this offensive line, guys, they got guys. Chase Basantis is still there. He did wind up going in the portal, then going back, but you have two really good running backs, and I think that they're vitally underrated at receiver post Evan Stewart. I got to be honest, I was watching some A&M games early last week. I rewatched them play Alabama. I rewatched, I think, the Ole Miss game there at the end, and I look at a guy like Moose Muhammad who's all over the place, literally all over the place. Late in games when they need a score, Max Johnson's either going to his brother at tight end or he's going to Moose Muhammad, and the kid was making plays. I do think that they're going to be fine. I just feel in my brain when I look at them on paper, man, this team could win 9 games. I think they're talented enough. I think they've got a good enough coaching staff. On paper, they have enough to win 9 games. Stop right there. Stop right there. Hold it, because that's what my brain is telling me when I look at the talent that they have on their roster. My gut tells me, not so fast, my friend. I want to be level-minded and say to myself, you know what, man, at some point you got to just go out there and prove it. It doesn't matter about what we talk about. Doesn't matter about all the talent that you've brought in. At some point, you got to go out there and prove that you are who you say that you are. You know, A&M says that they're a big dog. They don't look like it in football. I mean, let's just be honest. They don't look like it in football. If they think that they're one of the big dogs in the SEC, then What they've done on the field has not proved that to come and be. It has not. You can't look at A&M over the last decade out of one, and other than one season, maybe the Manziel season, because if that's what they have, if that's their big seasons in the SEC, if that's their big things that they do, you're not a big dog. You know who you are? Kentucky. Kentucky will have a big year randomly at will, but you might not even be Kentucky based off of what you've done the last 2 seasons under Jimbo Fisher. Now, coming from a guy who's an LSU fan, the last 2 years under Orgeron really sucked, but the very next year, or the first year of Brian Kelly, we went to an SEC championship game. My gut says, Blake, don't trust him. But is Mike Elko going to be different than Jimbo Fisher? Guys, he's the polar opposite. He is the polar opposite. Now, he's going to call his defense, but Jimbo had his hands in offensively. And everywhere Mike Elko has gone, they have been good defensively. Your head coach hired him. And, you know, the rumor mill, maybe he tried to hire Mike Elko when he first got here. They're going to be solid defensively. They're going to be hard-nosed. They're going to be tough. That is a Mike Elko portrayed football team. And I think they're going to do it. Actually, I know that they're going to do it. They're going to be tough. The question becomes, can you go into Kyle Field against that team potentially at night and beat them? Guys, I'm going to put a question mark at this game for me, because I look at them and say, you know what? You should beat them. Like, relatively, LSU should be able to go in Kyle Field based off of where both programs are at. You should beat them. Why does Vegas have LSU plus 2.5? Why does Vegas have LSU an underdog going to Kyle Field in preseason? The reason I think that is because of how close those games have been. You know, you couldn't go in there in 18 and beat them. You couldn't go in there in 20 and beat them. You couldn't go in 22 in there and beat them. Guys, actually, I lied. The last 3 times that you've been to Kyle Field, you haven't beat them. Burrow, Daniels, neither Heisman Trophy winning quarterback was able to beat him. Garrett Nussmeier's been around long enough to know that. So I just think there's so many question marks. If LSU lost this game, would I be shocked? Guys, I'm going to be real with you. I would not be. I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback on that. I know that people in the comments are going to rip me alive for it. I will tell you, at some point when you have that much talent, if the coaching is there, it's going to break through. You know, we started the show off by talking about Connor Stallions. Stay with me. When you have good coaching and have good play calls, look at what Michigan did with cheating. But when you have a defensive coordinator that calls and an offensive coordinator that calls really good plays, you will have success if you have the talent. And A&M does have the talent. They had an upgrade at defense from strictly a play caller. They got Shamar Stewart returning. They get Nick Scourton, who's going to be potentially a top 5 pick out of the portal next year. Their secondary is young, but you went after Des Ricks, and you wanted Des Ricks, so Des Ricks can't suck, right? I mean, Des Ricks sucks now because he went to another school? Is that how that works? Is that the logic that you have? And they're talented at running back. They're talented along their offensive line. I think we need to see how the season goes on. Can A&M sustain Notre Dame, of all people, going into Kyle Field and beating them? Actually, I'm going to ask you, put in the comments right now, who wins week 1, Texas A&M or Notre Dame? I want your feedback. Who wins? Put it in the comments right now. Are you 1,000% sold that Notre Dame's going to walk into Kyle Field and win? I think that could be a 7-point game. More in favor to Notre Dame because Marcus Freeman has been there and been sustained. That's game one for Mike Elko. There's no telling what could happen. I will remind you, Billy Napier, remember this. Billy Napier beat Utah in his first game at Florida with Anthony Richardson, and Utah was the Pac-12 champion. Anything can happen in week one. A&M could clip the wings of Notre Dame week one, and I would not be shocked.